The rain came down in sheets that night, blurring the line between sky and earth, as if the heavens themselves were weeping for what I had lost. I stood in the doorway of our old farmhouse, the one Mama had painted sunflower yellow before the cancer stole her away, watching my father pull up in his battered pickup, his new wife clinging to his arm like ivy on a crumbling wall. "Harper, darlin'," he called through the downpour, his voice thick with that southern drawl that once meant safety. "Come meet Lydia. She's family now." But in her eyes, sharp as shattered glass, I saw the lie before she ever spoke it, a pretense of warmth that would soon turn to ash, burning away the fragile pieces of me I had hidden in those letters to Evelyn. The scent of damp pine clung to everything in Blackwood Hollow, a forgotten corner of western North Carolina where the mountains folded into themselves like secrets too heavy to unfold. Our home sat at the edge of a gravel road that snaked through acres of wild rhododendron and oak, the kind of place where folks knew your business before you whispered it to the wind. I was 24, old enough to have carved out a life in the nearby college town of Asheville, sketching landscapes for tourists and dreaming of a gallery show that never came. But grief has a way of tethering you, and after Mama's funeral 6 months back, I had drifted home like smoke from a dying fire, helping Dad with the farm while my heart mended in fits and starts. Evelyn had been my anchor through it all. We met 2 years prior at a folk music festival in the Smokies, her laughter cutting through the banjo strings like sunlight-piercing fog. She was from Portland, Oregon, tall, with ink-black hair that fell in waves and eyes the color of storm-tossed waves, a photographer who chased light across the country. Our love unfolded in stolen weekends, her camera capturing the curve of my hip against mossy river rocks, my fingers tracing the tattoos snaking up her arms, delicate ferns and forgotten constellations. "You're my wild thing," she'd murmur, her breath warm against my neck. And I'd believe it, even as distance gnawed at us. When Mama got sick, Evelyn drove cross-country twice, holding my hand through the chemo haze, whispering promises of forever amid the beeps of hospital monitors. But forever is a fragile word. The last time we spoke, 3 months ago, her voice cracked over the phone line from some rainy Seattle street. "Harper, I can't keep chasing shadows. Your grief, it's swallowing you, and I don't know how to pull you out without drowning too." The line went dead, and with it, the letters I poured out in the weeks that followed, pages of ink-stained confessions, folded into envelopes I never mailed, tucked under my mattress like prayers to a God who had gone silent. They were my way of holding on to her, of rewriting the endings we never got, visions of us rebuilding a life in a cabin by the sea, her lens framing our mornings with coffee and salt air, my sketches blooming across the walls like wildflowers. Dad met Lydia at a widow's support group in town, or so he said. She was 42. With honey blonde hair pinned in a loose chignon and a smile that bloomed like magnolias in May, polished, almost too perfect for our rough-hued world. A real estate agent from Charlotte, she swept into our lives with casseroles and stories of her own losses, a husband taken by a heart attack, a daughter who had flown the nest to New York. "I've been where you are, Harper," she told me over her first dinner, her hand light on my forearm, manicured nails catching the lamplight. "Losing a mother. It's like the sun going out. But family mends it, piece by piece." I wanted to believe her. Dad's eyes lit up in her presence, the hollows under them softening for the first time since Mama's casket lowered into the red clay earth. So I nodded, forced a smile, and let her into the spaces Mama had left empty. First, it felt like sunlight after storm. Lydia helped with the chores, her laughter echoing through the barn as she learned to milk the goats, her perfume, a faint lavender, mingling with the hay and earth. She asked about my art, flipping through my sketchbooks with genuine awe, even suggesting I enter a local fair. "You've got a gift, sugar. Don't let it gather dust." And the nights she wasn't there, Dad would ramble on about her kindness, how she made him feel alive again. I saw it too, the way he straightened his shoulders, the spark in his stories. For a fleeting moment, I let myself hope this was redemption, a new chapter where loss didn't echo so loudly. But pretense has cracks, and hers began to show in the small things. A lingering glance when I mentioned Evelyn in passing, her lips tightening like a drawstring purse. "Sounds complicated," she'd say, steering the conversation to safer waters, the weather, the harvest moon rising fat over the ridges. I chalked it up to discomfort, the old South's unease with loves that didn't fit the mold. Blackwood Hollow wasn't Asheville. Here, whispers about those city girls could curdle milk. Though I kept my letters hidden, their words a private liturgy. "Evelyn, remember the fireflies in July? How we danced barefoot in the meadow? Your hand in mine like it was the only map we'd ever need? I miss the way you saw me, whole and unbroken." Fall deepened, leaves turning to flames on the branches, and Lydia moved in. The farmhouse, once a shrine to Mama's memory, her quilts draped over chairs, her wildflower pressed in frames, began to shift. Lydia's touches were subtle at first, fresh linen scented with her soap, a vase of store-bought lilies on the mantel where Mama's photo had stood alone. "It's time to make new memories," she said one evening, as we sat on the porch swing, the chains creaking like old bones. Dad was inside, humming to the radio, and I nodded, sipping chamomile tea that tasted faintly bitter. She reached for my hand then, her grip firm. "I want us to be close, Harper." Like daughters, the words hung in the air, heavy with expectation, and I felt a chill despite the wool blanket across my lap. That night, sleep evaded me. I slipped into the attic, flashlight beam dancing over dust motes, and pulled out the shoebox of letters. 37 in all, each sealed with wax from a candle we'd lit during a blackout last summer. I read one aloud to the shadows. "If I could rewind the clock, I choose you every time, even with the storms." Tears blurred the ink, but they were cathartic, a release valve for the ache that had settled in my chest like river stones. Downstairs, I heard Lydia's voice, low and soothing, lulling Dad to sleep. For the first time, doubt flickered. Was her affection a bridge or a barrier? Weeks blurred into a rhythm of uneasy harmony. Lydia hosted a harvest supper, inviting neighbors whose trucks rumbled up the drive with pies and jars of moonshine. She positioned me at her side, arm linked through mine, introducing me as my stepdaughter, the artist. Folks nodded approvingly, their eyes kind but curious, and I played the part, laughing at her jokes, accepting compliments on my latest charcoal of the misty valleys. But as the evening wore on, wine loosening tongues, someone asked about my beau. Lydia's hand tightened on my elbow. "Harper's independent," she interjected smoothly. "Focuses on her passions." The table chuckled, but I felt exposed. the letters under my bed suddenly too close to the surface. After the guests left, Dad pulled me aside in the kitchen, flour dusted from helping with the cornbread. "She's trying. Harp. Give it time." His eyes, the same faded blue as mine, pleaded for understanding. I hugged him fiercely, inhaling the scent of pipe tobacco and earth that always meant home. "I know, Dad. I am." But as I climbed the stairs, Lydia's gaze followed me, a shadow passing over her face, something unreadable, like clouds swallowing the moon. It was mid-November when the first snow dusted the peaks, turning the world ethereal white. I had driven to Asheville for supplies, charcoal and paper to capture the season's hush, and returned to find Lydia in my room. The door stood ajar, her silhouette bent over my dresser, rifling through drawers with the casualness of ownership. "Just tidying," she said when I cleared my throat, straightening with a stack of my old journals. But her cheeks flushed, and behind her, the edge of the mattress dipped slightly, as if disturbed. My heart stuttered. "Everything all right?" asked, voice steady despite the tremor in my fingers. "Fine, darlin'. Just making space." She brushed past me, her lavender trailing like a ghost. That night, I checked the box. The letters were there, envelopes intact, but something felt off, a faint char of paper, perhaps imagined. Sleep came fitful, dreams of flames licking at handwritten vows, Evelyn's face dissolving into smoke. The unraveling came swift as a mountain storm. 2 days later, I returned from a walk along the creek, boots caked in mud, to the acrid smell of burning leaves wafting from the backyard fire pit. Dad was at the mill, and Lydia stood there alone, silhouetted against the leaping flames, a metal poker in hand. She turned as I approached, her face a mask of serene finality. But in the fire's glow, I saw the remnants, curled edges of paper, ink blooming black like bruises. My letters. Dozens of them, reduced to ash drifting on the wind. "What have you done?" The words escaped as a whisper, then a choke, my knees buckling against the cold earth. She didn't flinch. "They were poison, Harper. Lies you tell yourself to stay broken. I did it for you, for us." Her voice cracked then, revealing the fracture. Not malice, but a desperate control, born of her own buried fears. I lost my girl to the city, to choices like that. I won't watch you throw away a good life on illusions. The world tilted, the mountains closing in like judgmental elders. Rage surged, hot and unbidden, mingling with the grief I thought I'd tamed. "You had no right," I spat, lunging for the pit, fingers scorching as I sifted through embers for any salvageable scrap. But there was nothing, only char. Mocking my pleas to Evelyn, our shared dreams turned to dust. Lydia watched, arms crossed, her eyes glistening not with regret, but resolve. "You'll thank me one day. When you find real love, the kind that lasts." Fled then, tears streaming, driving the winding roads until the hollow faded in my rearview. Asheville's lights beckoned like distant stars, but even there, the burn lingered in my palms, in my soul. The wound was fresh, deeper than Mama's passing, A betrayal wrapped in the guise of care. How could I forgive when the very words that held me together were gone? As dawn broke over the city, painting the skyline in pinks and golds, I parked by the French Broad River, its waters rushing indifferent to my unraveling. In that moment, rebirth felt impossible. Only the raw edge of survival remained, a spark waiting for wind. The days following the burning blurred into a haze of numb routine, each one a thread pulled tighter around my chest until breathing felt like betrayal. I crashed at a friend's loft in Asheville, a cramped space above a coffee roastery where the air hummed with the grind of beans and the low thrum of indie folk from a vintage turntable. Clara, my old art school buddy, didn't pry. She just slid mugs of black coffee my way and left sketchpads scattered like invitations to exorcise the demons. But my pencils lay idle, the pages blank as the voids Evelyn's absence had carved. Instead, I wandered the River Arts District, boots scuffing graffiti-streaked alleys, chasing the illusion of motion to outrun the echo of Lydia's words. Illusions. Texts from Dad piled up on my phone, simple pleas laced with apology. Lydia's sorry. Come home. Harp. We can talk. I deleted them unread, the sting too fresh, mingling with the older ache of losing Mama. She had been the one who saw me first, truly saw, holding me after my coming out at 16. Her arms a harbor against the town's sideways glances. Love's a river. Baby girl, she'd said, braiding my hair by the fire. It don't run straight, but it always finds its way. Now, that river felt damned, silted with ash and unspoken accusations. Lydia's face haunted me, not the magnolia smile, but the steel beneath, forged in her own losses. I pieced together fragments from Dad's stories. Her daughter, Eliza, had come out at 18, fled to Brooklyn with a girlfriend and a duffel bag, cutting ties when Lydia begged her to choose family over folly. The parallel twisted like a knife. Was I Eliza in her eyes? A mirror of mistakes to correct? Empathy flickered. Unwanted. But rage smothered it quick. She had invaded my sanctuary, torched my truths. Forgiveness? That was a distant shore, visible only in fever dreams. Winter gripped the mountains, snow blanketing the ridges in a hush that amplified every crack in my resolve. I took a temp job at a gallery, hanging exhibits of local potters and weavers, their earthy forms a balm to my fractured gaze. The owner, an eccentric named Theo with silver hair and paint-splattered overalls, noticed my distraction. Art's like breathin'. Harper, he drawled one afternoon, as I fumbled a frame. Hold it too tight. It chokes you. His words lingered, prodding me toward the sketchbook that night. Under the loft's single bulb, I drew not landscapes, but abstracts, swirling charcoals of flame and feather, ink bleeding into pleas unsent. Evelyn's name emerged unbidden, etched in the margins like a scar. One evening, Clara dragged me to a poetry slam at a dive bar on Patton Avenue, the air thick with cigarette haze and the buzz of bodies seeking solace in verse. You need noise, she insisted, pressing a gin and tonic into my hand. I nursed it, the juniper bite grounding me as performers took the stage, voices raw, spilling heartaches like offerings. A woman near the mic caught my eye midway through, mid-20s, perhaps, with cropped chestnut hair and a leather jacket slung over one shoulder, her fingers tapping rhythm on a scarred wooden table. She wasn't performing, just listening, her profile sharp against the neon glow, a quiet intensity radiating like heat from embers. When the host called for open mic, she hesitated, then rose, unfolding a notebook with the grace of someone accustomed to vulnerability. Her name was Riley Kane, she said, voice steady with a faint Vermont lilt, crisp edges softened by southern soaks. The poem poured out, lines about fractured homes and the ghosts of mothers who loved too hard, too late. We build altars from apologies, but the gods stay silent, she recited, her eyes locking on mine for a beat that stretched eternal. The crowd snapped approval, but I was adrift in the echo, her words a lantern in my fog, illuminating the shape of my own unspoken dirge. Afterward, as the bar emptied into the frosted night, she lingered by the exit, exhaling clouds into the chill. That hit close, I ventured, my voice smaller than intended, hands shoved deep in my pockets. She turned, surprise melting into a half-smile, dimples carving shadows in her cheeks. Yeah? What's your altar made of? We talked then. Words tumbling like loose stones down a hillside. Her flight from a conservative mill town in the Green Mountains after her parents disowned her for a high school sweetheart. My mama's quiet acceptance. The farm that felt like quicksand now. No mentions of letters or burnings, but the air hummed with shared fractures. A tentative bridge over the chasm. She bought me a hot cider from a street vendor, steam curling between us like whispered confidences. Riley was 26, a carpenter by trade, restoring old barns in the surrounding counties, hands callous from hammers and heartwood, but gentle when she brushed frost from my sleeve. There's healing in the making, she said, eyes tracing the stars pricking the velvet sky. Turn ruin into refuge. We parted with a promise of coffee. Her number scrawled on a napkin that I clutched like a talisman through the drive back to Clara's. The encounter lingered, a warm thread weaving through the cold weave of days. I sketched her from memory, the curve of her jaw, the way her laugh lines crinkled like birch bark in sun. Dad called again, voice gravelly with unshed tears. She didn't mean it. Harp. Lydia's scared. Thinks she's protecting you like she couldn't protect Eliza. The confession cracked something in me. A fissure where understanding seeped. Unwanted but insistent. I hung up without reply. But the seed took root. Sprouting questions in the quiet hours. Was destruction her language of love? Twisted by regret? Spring teased at the edges of winter. Crocuses pushing through snowmelt along the riverbanks. Their purple defiant against the gray. Riley and I met at a diner off Biltmore Avenue. Vinyl booths cracked like old smiles. The jukebox crooning Patsy Cline. Conversation flowed easy. Her love for rebuilding what others discarded. My stalled dreams of exhibiting in galleries beyond the tourist traps. Show me your work, she urged. And I did, pulling a dog-eared portfolio from my bag. Her fingers traced the lines, reverent, lingering on a piece of Evelyn and me by the creek. Our silhouettes blurred in twilight haze. This is alive, she murmured. Pain and all. Jealousy didn't flicker in her. Instead, a quiet nod. Loss carves space for more. If you're brave enough to fill it. We walked afterward. Her hand brushing mine accidental on purpose. Sending sparks along my skin like fireflies reigniting. At her truck, parked under budding maples, she leaned in not for a kiss, but a forehead touch. Breath mingling warm. Thank you for seeing me, she whispered. And I echoed it. The words a key turning in a long locked door. Back at the loft, Clara raised an eyebrow over her tea. Riley. Huh. She looks at you like you're a blueprint she wants to build. I laughed. Genuine for the first time in months. But sleep brought dreams of ash-strewn fields. Lydia's face morphing into my own. Accuser and accused entwined. The breakdown loomed. Inevitable as thunderheads rolling in from the west. But in Riley's orbit, I glimpsed a horizon beyond the storm. The first real fracture came on a Sunday in early April, when the dogwoods bloomed pink against the greening hills, their petals like confetti from a half-remembered celebration. I had mustered the courage to drive back to Blackwood Hollow, not for reconciliation, but necessity. Dad's birthday loomed, and the farm's ledgers needed balancing before tax season swallowed us whole. Riley offered to come, her truck idling at the loft's curb, but I waved her off. This is mine to mend, I said, though doubt gnawed like termites in the floorboards. The road wound familiar, ferns unfurling along the verges, the air thick with the promise of rain. As the farmhouse came into view, its yellow paint peeling under winter's scars, pang hit home. Once sanctuary, now a battlefield strewn with embers. Dad met me on the porch, arms open wide, his embrace rough with unspoken pleas. Missed you, girl. Lydia hovered in the doorway, apron dusted with flour, her smile tentative as a truce flag. Harper. It's good to see you. No warmth, but no steel either, just the hollow echo of what might have been. We ate lunch in the kitchen. Cornbread steaming beside collards simmered slow, the clink of forks a fragile rhythm. Conversation skirted the edges. Dad's tales of the mill's new machinery. The goats kidding come May. Lydia chimed in softly, praising my gallery job, her eyes avoiding mine like averted storms. But tension coiled, invisible wire tightening with each bite. As Dad napped in his recliner to the murmur of a baseball game on the radio, she followed me to the office, the shoebox of ledgers heavy in my arms. I owe you an apology, she began, voice low, hands twisting a dish rag like a lifeline. The room smelled of ink and aged paper, sunlight slanting through lace curtains Mama had sewn. I set the box down, spine rigid. Words won't fix what's burned, she flinched, but pressed on. Eliza. She wrote letters to. Vows to that girl. Dreams of a life that broke her heart when it ended. I found them after she left, and I tore them up. Thought it'd keep her from running. Her confession hung, raw as exposed root. When I saw yours, hidden away, it was like seeing her again. I panicked. Thought I could save you from that pain. Empathy warred with fury, a tide pulling against the shore. You don't get to decide my pain, Lydia. Those letters were mine, pieces of Evelyn, of me surviving her leaving. Tears pricked, hot and unbidden. She reached out, then withdrew, as if burned herself. I know. I know. Your daddy. He loves you fierce. And I wanted to, too. But fear's a blindfold. The admission cracked her facade, revealing the woman beneath. Not villain, but vessel of her own unhealed wounds. Cracked porcelain trying to hold water. Dad stirred then, calling from the hall, and the moment shattered. We worked in silence, numbers blurring on the page, the air thick with what lingered unsaid. By dusk, as I packed to leave, he pulled me into a hug that smelled of aftershave and regret. Stay for cake, but I shook my head. The weight too much. Driving away, the hollow receding in the mirror, catharsis bloomed, not forgiveness, but understanding's fragile shoot, green and tender. Riley waited with takeout from a taqueria, sprawled on the loft's threadbare rug, fairy lights casting her in soft amber. "How'd it go?" she asked, passing a tamale warm as hearthfire. I recounted it all, words spilling like rain off eaves, her listening a steady anchor. When I faltered on Lydia's story, she set her plate aside, drawing me close. "Sounds like she's drowning in her own river. Doesn't make it right, but it makes her human." Her hand in mine, calluses mapping my palm, grounded me, a touch that spoke of building, not breaking. That night, we walked the river trail, willows trailing fingers in the current, their reflections silvered by moonlight. Riley shared more of her own unraveling, the Vermont winters that mirrored her parents' chill, the carpenter's apprenticeship that saved her from despair. "I hammer out the splinters," she said, voice soft against the water's rush. One nail at a time, we paused on a footbridge. The world narrowed to us, her profile etched in starlight, my heart thudding a new rhythm. She turned, a searching, and I leaned in, our lips meeting tentative as spring thaw. It was salt and sweetness, grief yielding to grace, her arms a framework for the home I was learning to rebuild. But peace is fleeting, the breakdown crested a week later, triggered by a package from Evelyn. It arrived unannounced at the gallery, wrapped in brown paper, postmarked Portland. Inside, a leather-bound journal, her handwriting on the first page. "Harper, I kept these sketches you left behind. They remind me of what we were. Be gentle with yourself. E. The drawings, us in the meadow." Her lens imagined through my lines, unraveled me. I fled to the loft, curling on the floor amid scattered tools, sobs racking like thunder. Riley found me there, fresh from a job site, sawdust clinging to her jeans. She didn't speak at first, just knelt, gathering me into her lap like fragile pottery. "Let it out," she whispered, rocking gentle as a lullaby. Words tumbled then, Evelyn's ghost, the letter's pyre, Lydia's desperate grasp. Riley held space, her silence a canvas for my storm. When it ebbed, she traced my tear-streaked face. "You're not ashes, Harper. You're the spark that survives the fire." We spent the evening piecing the journal with my new sketches, her pencil adding borders of vines and stars, collaborative as our breaths entwining. Dawn found us asleep on the rug, limbs tangled in quiet claim. Outside, birdsong heralded May, petals drifting like pardons on the breeze. Forgiveness stirred deeper now, not absolution, but release, a loosening of chains forged in flame. Yet the path twisted, Dad called midweek, voice frayed. "Lydia's leaving me. Harp. Says she can't fix what she broke." The news hollowed me, pity mingling with the old hurt. Riley urged the drive home, her hand steady on the gear shift. "Face it together," she said. The hollow greeted us with summer's full bloom, azaleas rioting red along the drive. Lydia sat on the porch swing, suitcase at her feet, face drawn as weathered oak. Dad paced nearby, shadows under his eyes like bruises. She rose as we approached, gaze flicking to Riley, curious, not condemning. I came to say goodbye proper. Her voice trembled, hands clasped white-knuckled. And to make amends. If you'll hear them. We sat then, the four of us on mismatched chairs, the air humming with cicadas' chorus. Lydia spoke halting, her fears. Eliza's silence spanning years. The terror of history repeating. I thought burning them would cauterize the wound. But it just spread the fire. Tears traced her cheeks. Unashamed. I listen. Riley's fingers laced with mine under the table. A silent vow. It hurt, I admitted. Voice steady. But I see you now, not the mask, but the woman scared of losing more. Dad reached for her hand. Tentative bridge. Words flowed then, promises of therapy, of mending as family, flawed and fumbling. No fairy tale fix, but a clearing of debris, sunlight piercing the canopy. As dusk fell, painting the sky in lavenders and golds, Lydia hugged me goodbye, not daughter to mother, but two souls scarred by love's fierce edges. Write new letters, she whispered. To whoever holds your heart. Riley and I drove back under stars, her head on my shoulder, the road ahead curving toward unknown horizons. Understanding had bloomed into something softer, not erasure, but integration. Wounds woven into the fabric of who we were becoming. Summer unfurled in Blackwood Hollow like a banner of reluctant hope, the air heavy with honeysuckle and the distant rumble of thunderstorms brewing over the ridges. Riley and I had settled into a rhythm, her restoring a derelict cabin on the farm's outskirts while I commuted to Asheville. The gallery's walls now adorned with my abstracts, charred swirls birthing phoenix feathers, titles like embers unbound. Theo beamed at the opening, champagne flutes clinking amid murmurs of raw and resonant. Riley stood at my elbow, her pride a quiet glow, whispering, "This is you." Rising. But healing's path is no straight mountain trail. It loops through shadowed valleys, demanding confrontation with the ghosts that linger. Eliza's return precipitated it. A letter forwarded from Lydia, postmarked Brooklyn, arriving like a late-blooming wildflower. Mom told me about the fire. I'm sorry I left you to carry it alone. Coffee in the city? Not my Evelyn, but an echo of possibility, a chance to witness forgiveness in action. Lydia called that evening, voice tentative over the line's faint crackle. She's coming down next month. Thinks it might help us both, if you're willing to meet her. I hesitated, the old burn flaring phantom hot in my chest. Riley, sanding floorboards in the cabin's half-light, paused to listen. Go if it feels right, she said. Sawdust motes dancing in the sunbeam between us. Not for them, for the map it draws in you. Her wisdom, honed from years of planing rough edges smooth, steadied me. We spent the night on the cabin's unfinished porch, stars wheeling overhead. Her stories of Vermont's maple sugaring seasons lulling me, tales of sap rising slow through frozen trunks, sweetening with time. Eliza arrived on a sweltering July afternoon, her cab kicking up dust on the gravel drive. She was 30, lithe as a willow, with Lydia's honey hair cropped short and pierced ears glinting in the sun. A tattoo of a Brooklyn bridge spanned her collarbone, Visible under a tank top splashed with paint, she was an urban muralist, turning concrete canyons into canvases of color. "Harper," she said. Handshake firm. Eyes the same sharp blue as her mother's, but softened by city miles. "Heard you make beauty from breakage." Respect. We walked the farm's perimeter. Dad trailing at a distance with a jug of sweet tea. Lydia's absence a deliberate space for us to fill. Eliza spoke freely, of the girlfriend who became wife, then ex in a whirl of young love's tempests, of the letters Lydia shredded, found years later in an attic trunk, pieced together like a mosaic of regret. She meant to protect, but it isolated us both. Laughter bubbled then. Riot the shared folly. Moms. Huh, they armor up with good intentions. Forget we're the ones in the fray. Her words mirrored my own skirmishes. Prompting confessions. Evelyn's journal. The sketches that bridged our ended era. I kept writing to her, even after I admitted, kicking a pebble into the creek's murmur. Until they burned. Eliza nodded. No pity. Just kinship. Right to the living now. The ones who stay. We exchanged numbers. Promises of art swaps. Her street grit for my mountain hush. As she drove off toward Charlotte for a layover with Lydia, a lightness settled. Forgiveness's first full breath. Not absolution's weight lifted, but burdens shared. Halved in the telling. Riley marked the milestone with a surprise, a road trip to the Outer Banks, where dunes rolled like frozen waves under Carolina's endless blue. We packed her truck with coolers of shrimp salad and guitars borrowed from Clara. The drive a tapestry of playlists, Lucinda Williams crooning loss, Brandy Carlisle vowing resilience. At Cape Hatteras, we claimed a driftwood fire on the beach, waves lapping rhythmic as heartbeats, the horizon swallowing the sun in a blaze of tangerine and rose. There, under the Milky Way's sprawl, we talked depths unspoken. Riley confessed her own ghosts, a college love derailed by distance, letters unanswered that left her hammering walls instead of hearts. I built barriers, she said, flames gilding her features. Until you showed me doors. Vulnerability hung between us, fragile as sea glass, and I kissed her then deep, unhurried, tasting salt and smoke. Our bodies aligned on the blanket, hands exploring with reverence, not conquest, fingers tracing collarbones like cartographers of care, breath sinking to the tide's pull. No rush to claim, just presence, love as communion, mending the fractures light by light. Back in the hollow, the cabin neared completion, pine beams gleaming, windows framing vistas of layered peaks. Dad helped one weekend, his hammer swings companionable, Lydia joining with trays of lemonade. Her presence quieter now, laced with deference. Eliza says your family, she told me during a break, eyes downcast but earnest. If you'll have me as whatever this becomes. I nodded. The word stepmother too laden, but ally fitting like a well-worn glove. We're all piecing it, I replied, and she smiled genuine, cracked but whole. August brought a heat that shimmered the air, mirages dancing on the fields. I mailed a letter to Evelyn, not of longing, but gratitude. Your sketches returned me to myself. Thank you for the chapter. No reply expected, but the sending sealed it, a rite of release. Envelope sailing on winds toward the Pacific. Riley and I celebrated with a picnic under the old oak. Quilt spread amid fireflies ballet. Her head in my lap as I read poetry from a volume of Mary Oliver. Lines about wild geese urging us home to our true lives. Yet shadows lingered. Dad's health faltered. A cough lingering from mill dust turning stubborn. At the clinic in Asheville, the doctor spoke of early emphysema. Prescriptions scribbled like sentences. Rest. Quit the smokes, he advised. And Dad nodded. But his eyes' haunted hollows betrayed the fear. Lydia rallied, cooking bone broths and scheduling walks. Her care a quiet atonement. Riley and I joined them on evenings along the creek. Stories weaving us tighter. Her Vermont winters. My mama's garden lore. Dad's boyhood escapades in the hollers. One twilight, as swallows wheeled against the fading sky, Dad pulled me aside. I failed you. Harp. Letting her touch your things. His voice gravel. Hand rough on my shoulder. But seeing you now with Riley, with light in your eyes, that's the mend. Tears welled. Mutual. And I held him. The oak's branches a canopy of absolution. Forgiveness flowed full then. Not erasure but embrace. Scars as stories. Etched deep but no longer bleeding. As leaves hinted at gold, Riley proposed we make the cabin ours. A nest for whatever comes. We painted walls sage green. Hung my gallery pieces beside her tool sketches. A gallery of us. Nights found us on the porch swing. Her fingers strumming guitar strings soft. My head against her shoulder. The mountains cradling our whispers. Love. Once a burned offering. Now a hearth steady flame. Warming the hollows within. Autumn's palette descended on the blue ridge like a painter's fever dream. Crimson maples bleeding into amber hickories. The air crisp with the scent of decaying leaves and wood smoke from distant chimneys. The cabin stood complete now. Its rafters echoing with laughter where silence once reigned. Riley's hammer traded for shared suppers of venison stew and cornbread baked in Mama's old iron skillet. I had moved in fully. My Asheville shifts paired to weekends. The gallery's success. A solo show slated for spring. Fueling a quiet confidence that bloomed alongside the asters nodding in the meadow. Rebirth whispered in the details. Mornings waking to Riley's coffee brewing. Its aroma curling like invitation. Evenings sketching by the hearth. Her form a study in repose, legs stretched. Book of Carpenter's lore open on her chest. Rising falling with breath. Our love unfolded deliberate. A garden tended row by row. Touches that lingered over breakfast plates. Conversations delving like roots into soil. Her dreams of teaching workshops in reclaimed barns. My visions of illustrating children's tales of resilient heroines navigating wild woods. We're the story now, she'd say. Ice crinkling. And I'd believe it. The narrative shifting from elegy to anthem. Dad's health steadied under the doctor's regime. His cough easing to a rasp. Lydia's presence a steady keel. She had rented a cottage in town. Close enough for suppers but granting space for breaths to deepen. Eliza visited twice more. Her murals splashed across the barn's side. A cascade of vines entwining fractured stones. Symbolizing what words couldn't. For the hollow, she said. Paintbrush in hand. Lydia watching from the porch with eyes wet bright. One evening. Over cider press from the farm's apples. They mended aloud. Apologies traded like heirlooms. Laughter punctuating the litany. I was blind to your flight, Lydia admitted. Hand on Eliza's knee. But I'll learn to follow. Not fence. Witnessing it stirred my own renewal. A shedding of old skins. I burn no bridges. But built lanterns, letters to Evelyn sparse now. Updates on shows and sunsets. Her replies occasional postcards of Pacific fog. Cordial as old friends. The ache had transmuted. From wound to wisdom. Her chapter a foundation stone in the edifice of me. Riley and I hiked the Appalachian Trail one crisp October dawn. Backpacks light with sandwiches and thermoses. The path climbing through laurel thickets to a bald where vistas unfurled endless. At the summit, wind whipping our scarves, she knelt not with ring, but resolve. Build this life with me, Harper. All the seasons, tears blurred the valleys below, joy sharp as new growth after frost. Yes, I breathed, pulling her up into an embrace that tasted of earth and eternity. We descended hand in hand, the world sharper, colors vivid as if viewed through fresh lenses, love as rebirth, not replacement, but reclamation of the self long hidden. Winter's hush followed. Snow mantling the cabin in downy white. Icicles dangling like crystal chimes from the eaves. We hosted solstice. Strings of lights twinkling against frost-laced windows. Dad and Lydia arriving with pies. Clara hauling in her fiddle for reels that set feet tapping. Eliza Skyped from Brooklyn. Her wife's face peeking over shoulder. Toasts raised to new roots. Laughter filled the rooms Mama's quilts warmed. Stories circling like embers. Riley's tale of a collapsed beam turned triumph. My recount of the show's curator calling my work luminous with survival. In the quiet after, Riley and I lay abed. Flakes drifting past the pane like whispered vows. What's next? She murmured. Fingers tracing my spine. Pondered. The ceiling's beams a map of possibilities. A trip west. Maybe. Portland's bridges. Your Vermont greens. Gather the pieces. She nodded. Sleep claiming her soft. But I lingered awake. Gratitude a tide washing clean. The burning. Once apocalypse. Now origin story. Ash fertilizing the soil where this flourished. Spring's resurgence mirrored my inner thaw. Dogwoods reblooming as if an echo. The gallery show opened to murmurs of acclaim. Walls alive with my evolution. Early charcoals of flame's fury yielding to oils of dawnlit dawns. Riley's form woven subtle into landscapes. A silhouette against sunrise. Hand extended. Lydia attended. Arm linked with Dad's. Her whisper at the exhibit's close. Proud of you, Harper. Truly, no stepmother's title. But the sentiment landed warm. A bridge arched graceful over old chasms. Evelyn's card arrived then. A watercolor of Oregon pines. Heard about the show. Knew you'd rise. Braver than you know. E. I framed it beside Mama's photo on the cabin mantel. A triptych of loves that shaped without shackling. Riley and I planned the road trip for summer's cusp. Route penciled loose. Smokies to Shenandoah. Then north to her green mountains. Maple stands awaiting. Our Odyssey, she called it. Packing the truck with easels and toolkits. Dream straps secure. One June eve. As fireflies ignited the meadow. Dad gathered us on the farmhouse porch. Lydia. Eliza via video. Clara tuning her strings. He cleared throat. Voice steady. This family's a quilt now, patches from pain. Stitched with time. Glasses clinked. Cider sparkling. And I felt it, rebirth complete. Not endpoint but ever unfolding. A life reclaimed from embers. Yet renewal demands vigilance. Doubts surfaced in quiet hours. Whispers of what if the winds shift. Riley sensed them, drawing me on walks where the creek babbled reassurance. Her hand a compass. We're timber and canvas, she'd say. Strong together. Therapy joined our routine. Sessions in Asheville where words unpacked like luggage long carried. Lydia attending separate. Her progress shared in check-ins that felt like kin. Forgiveness, I learned, was iterative. Daily choices to see humanity in the hurters, grace in the grooves they left. By midsummer, the trip commenced. Highways unspooling under tires humming promise. We camped in hollows, her carving whittled owls from birch while I sketched the play of light on tint canvas. In Vermont, her childhood barn stood weathered sentinel. We restored a shutter together. Nails driven true. Her parents aged, arthritic, watching from kitchen windows. Nods evolving to tea invitations. No full mending, but cracks sealed with courtesy's mortar. Portland welcomed with drizzle-kissed streets. Evelyn's Cafe a neutral ground for coffee and closure. She was unchanged, ink hair silver-threaded. Eyes still storm-deep, but softened. A partner at her side. Barista apron dusted flour. You look home, she said. Hug brief but heartfelt. Stories exchanged. Her gallery in Seattle. My cabin life. No regrets voiced. Just quiet honor for the love that launched us. Driving away. Riley's squeeze said enough. Past honored. Present held. Back in the hollow. Autumn circled again. Cycles affirming resilience. The cabin's hearth crackled nightly. Our lives a tapestry rich with thread. Art shows. Workshops taught hand in hand. Dad's garden thriving under Lydia's green thumb. Eliza's mural expanded. Figures emerging, women linked arm in arm. Ascending peaks. Us, she texted. And it was. Collective ascent from valleys forged in fire. Rebirth, I realize, was no singular dawn but perpetual sunrise, light chasing shadow. Love the eternal kindling. With Riley beside me, the world unfolded benevolent. A canvas awaiting our marks. The wheel turned full circle that final winter. Snow blanketing the hollow in a mercy of white. Muffling the world's clamor to allow introspection's hush. Riley and I had woven our days into a deliberate weave. Her carpentry commissions funding expansions to the cabin. A studio loft for my easel. Shelves groaning under shared reeds of poetry and prose. Mornings began with her brewing pour over. Steam rising like prayers. My sketches capturing the curve of her wrist against Mug's curve. You're my muse and my mirror, I told her one dawn. Charcoal smudging my fingers as I outlined her profile against frost-rimed window. Love, in its maturity, revealed itself as quiet revolution, not fireworks but firmament. Stars steady against night's vast. We navigated tempests small, a delayed exhibit shipment sparking frayed nerves. Her Vermont family visit dredging old silences, but emerged tempered. Conversations like bellows fanning embers to flame. We choose this, she'd affirm. Post-argument. Hands cupping my face. Every dawn. And we did. Fidelity a verb. Enacted in gestures. Notes tucked in lunch pails. Dances slow in the kitchen to Joan Baez's ballads. Dad's remission held. His frame filling out with Lydia's coaxing. Walks tracing the creek where Mama and I once foraged ramps. Stories retold with laughter edging grief. Lydia, too, transformed. Her cottage a haven of herbal teas and half-finished novels. Eliza's visits lengthening to weeks. Mother-daughter hikes yielding photos shared in group chats. Smiles unforced. Arms linked loose. One crisp February day. She invited me for tea. The steam-curling tales of her youth. A Charlotte girl dreaming big. Marriage a cage gilded with convention. I clipped wings to keep them safe, she confessed. Eyes on the heart's glow. Mine and yours. Foolish fire. I stirred honey slow. Words measured. It scarred. But scars teach texture. She nodded. Vulnerability a bridge we crossed tentative. Emerging allies in the art of unlearning. Forgiveness. Full-flowered now. Bloomed in reciprocity. Her attending my next show. Buying the piece of us by the sea. Me hosting her for solstice. Toasting to wings mended. Spring's symphony heralded expansion. Evelyn's wedding invite. A garden affair in Portland. Accepted with Riley's encouragement. Close the ark, she urged. Packing our bags with care. The flight west carried us over patchwork fields. Landing in rain-swept embrace. The ceremony unfolded under arbors dripping wisteria. Evelyn radiant in linen. Her bride's vows echoing our own unspoken oaths. At the reception, amid clinking glasses and string quartet sighs, Evelyn pulled me aside. You were my first true north, she said. Eyes misting. Grateful for the guiding, Riley danced with me under lanterns. Her steps sure. Our laughter mingling with the crowd's hum. No ghosts lingered, only gratitude's afterglow. The past a foundation firm but not confining. Returning east, we detoured to Seattle's galleries. My portfolio under arm. Connections sparked that promise cross-country exhibits. Bridges built from shared scars. Summer's zenith brought communal harvest. The farm's fields yielding bumper crops. Neighbors converging for a festival under the old oak. Clara's fiddle wailed reels. Eliza's murals backdrop to potlucks laden with fried green tomatoes and blackberry cobbler. Dad, arm around Lydia, raised a jar of cider. To kin, blood and chosen, cheers rippled. Fireflies ascending like released wishes. Riley's hand warm in mine. Her whisper, our light. Yet light's companion is shadow. Riley's diagnosis came quiet. A routine check unearthing a benign tumor on her vocal cord. Operable. But demanding surgery's knife. Fear coiled. Cold as winter's breath. But we faced it tandem. Consultations in Asheville's hushed halls. Her voice rasping jokes to ease the pall. I'll sing off-key for you, she quipped. And I laughed through tears. Holding her post-op in sterile light. Her first croak of victory aria. Recovery mirrored our journey. Slow infusions of soup and song. Her hammer laid aside for my readings aloud. Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. Audre Lorde's litanies of survival. Strength returned in whispers. Then full timbre. Our first duet under stars, a hymn to endurance. The scare deepened us. Love's roots plunging deeper. Emerging not brittle but buoyant. Fall's foliage framed a proposal proper. Atop the bald where she'd knelt before. Ring simple, white gold etched with ferns. Symbol of her tattoos. Forever so workshop, she said. Kneeling again. Eyes see deep. Build it with me? Tears traced joy's path. My yes a vow etched eternal. We wed in the hollow come November. Under bare branches laced with lights. Guests a circle of quilts and kin. Dad tearful. Lydia beaming. Eliza officiating with verses from sapphic poets. Vows exchanged like blueprints. I choose your shadows as my shelter. Your light as my guide. Winter waned into a spring of firsts. Honeymoon in the Smokies Wilds. Tent pitched by waterfalls thundering renewal. My book of illustrations published. Tales of girls loving fierce through storms. Dedicated to Riley. My endless horizon. Life layered on. Rich as compost. Workshops co-taught. Her barns restored with my murals adorning walls. Dad and Lydia's vow renewal. Small and sweet by the creek. Years folded like accordions. Each season a stanza in our epic. Children not by blood but by choice. Fostering a teen from the hollers. Her sketches blooming under our roof. Evelyn visited once. With stories of her own family forged. Lydia. Grandmother in spirit. Baking cookies misshapen but loved. In the quiet of an autumn eve. Porch swing creaking under our weight. Riley's head on my shoulder. I traced the lines fate etched. Burned letters to boundless love. Fractures to firmament. The mountains cradled us. Eternal sentinels. Whispering you rose. And in rising. Lit the way. Light. Once stolen. Now ours to steward warm. Unwavering. A beacon for the wanderers yet to come. And in that glow. We rested. Whole.